Good evening, guys. I don't know if you can see me or not. Give me just another minute and we will get the technical stuff going. I'm just waiting for Carlos to sign in and we'll get started. So give us just another minute.
With the one login. I'm gonna hang up on my. Morning, gentlemen.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good. Thanks for helping us out, Wayne. Obviously, this is not my forte on technology, but Carlos is here and ready to get started.
Absolutely. Thank you
Uh,
so much guys for having me. I
have a
guess
look.
what time is there for you guys?
For Australia, it's 11 a.m.
Oh, okay, that's great. Out here is 9 p.m. for us, 9:06 right now. And
Wow.
I just got finished working with a police department doing some bite work, so I have some good bruises going on right now. So it's perfect to get started with the bite work development.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Carlos, for helping us out tonight. I'm sure you don't need much of a introduction. I know you're going to introduce yourself here in a minute, but I just want to say to all the people that are watching tonight, you are definitely one of the most respected decoys here in North America, and I personally have learned a ton from you. And I've got to see decoys all over the world, and I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to give this presentation to all of the folks that are here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm very humble from everyone listening to me all the way from Australia. That's crazy for me to even think about. I come from a small island, Puerto Rico. So it's crazy to even people in Australia want to listen to what I have to say. But in any way that I can help, I always like to help and teach. So let's get started.
A lot of people in this people get
Perfect. All right. So the presentation is going to be based on bite work development, and my bite work, the way that I do it, and I'm sure everybody has heard this in the past, but there's only one thing that two dog trainers agree on, and that is that a third dog trainer is doing something wrong. So I'm not saying in any way that this is the only way. I'm just saying that this is the way that I do it and the way that brings me success. So if in any way what I'm saying you don't understand it, just feel free to ask at the end. We're gonna have a Q&A, so I'll gladly explain anything. But let's get started here right away. So to talk a little bit about myself, I was born in Puerto Rico, like I said, in the city of Caguas, and there I was raised in a horse farm. That's how I got started with animals. And my whole family started training horses, but for some reason I always was attracted to the dogs, and that's how I got started with the dog training. I've got to the United States with an Ohio State University scholarship. I used to play professional volleyball and also play the NCAA Division I. So that's the reason I came to the United States to begin with. And after that, I decided to attend the Tombrook School, where I graduated my first time that I got education as a dog trainer formally. After graduated, I had the opportunity to work with several people that I consider to be some of the leaders in the canine industry, like Mike Ritland, Wayne Dodge, and multiple other people that are my peers and also my mentors. I get to work, I have the privilege, I get to work with a lot of people that I consider to be great dog trainers. It's crazy that I get to work alongside them. So it's a very humbling opportunity. And for me, what I really specialize, what I really enjoy is the aggression part of training, teaching the dogs the confidence that it needs to actually get on a fight. So that's what this is all based on. So let's get started here. Some important notes that I always like everyone to know about Bitework development. Number one is, if you are a handler or you see something, you know, you're watching a dog being worked and you see something that is wrong, speak up, say something. Don't just think that because this person, you think they're pros and you think they know what they're doing, they're famous or whatever, but what they're doing, you just feel like it's just not right. You can talk, you know, speak up, say something. Any trainer should be able to explain why they're doing what they're doing. If they can't explain it, if they can only tell you because this is how I always done it, then that's wrong. For me, I always like to have an explanation. I would like to know how I do what I do. And if I don't, I'll tell you, I don't know, but hey, let's figure it out together, right? So no need to say that there's only one way. So always speak up. Number two, in dog training, the dog must always be having fun. That is something that is number one. If the dog, when they're learning, they need to be in the proper mindset to learn. So the dog needs to be having fun. So they're willing to participate and they're actually enjoying what they're doing. Otherwise, if you're forcing a dog to do something they don't want, if you're forcing a dog to bite a person when they don't want to, that's abuse in my opinion. If you're just like a human being that doesn't want to fight and we force them to jump into a cage fight, that is abuse because that person just doesn't want to be there. So it's the same with our dogs. We choose the right dogs to make sure that they want to do this, and that's why we allow them to, because they want to do it. But I will never force a dog to do something if they don't willingly choose to do so. It's always better to do less than to do it wrong. Whenever I see a lot of dogs that they get pushed and they get to do too much too soon. And I feel that when the dog has the proper genetics, it's better to let the dog mature and let the dog grow slowly. And we let them do everything with positive repetitions, you know, try to do it as good as we can. So make sure that the dog is constantly winning and getting the repetitions and getting the memory that, hey, when I do this, this is good. This is something that I really enjoy. So we got to make sure that it's better to do less than to do it wrong. All right, let's get started. Training with a purpose. That's something that is very important to me. And one of the number one things that I see that happen when a dog, you know, when I'm working with a group and when I see dogs being trained, most people just go out there without any purpose. They just go with the idea, my dog is gonna bite this decoy and that's it. It's called Bitework, so that's all we do. And in my opinion, that's wrong. I believe that we always have a purpose. What are we working? Are we working on grips? Are we working on cues on how to regrip and things like this? Are we working on stamina? Are we making sure the dog can work a long period of time? Are we working on outs? What is the purpose of what we're doing? If we're just going there without any training goals, if there's no training goals, you're training for nothing. I always like to say that because I like to have a training plan. I want to know what's going to happen. I want the decoy to know. I want to know that way if something goes wrong, we know how to fix it. And that's for the training plan. Create that training plan based on what you want to accomplish. Like I said, if you want the dog to better their grips, then from the beginning we say, hey, I'm working on their grips. What do you want to do? How are we going to accomplish that? And every dog is different. So even I've seen dogs on the exact same litter reach those milestones at completely different times. Like right now, actually, I'm working 2 puppies from the same litter. They're 10 months old, and one is already on the bite tube, which is extremely early in my opinion, but the dog was unsafe to work on a sleeve anymore. So we chose to put him on a suit. And his litter mate is exactly the same size, everything's the same, but it's a lot slower. Still working on a wedge, not so confident to bite a suit. And they're from the same litter, everything the exact same. So every dog's reached a milestone in a different time. And then the most important thing is stick to your plan. A lot of times we like to, for me, I like to call it training ADD. We start working on something and then the training session deviates into something else, but we need to stick to our plan. If we see something that needs to be worked on in the middle of that plan, we just kind of make a mental note about it, and we make sure that the next training session includes that. But we cannot change what we had on the fly, like what we had planned, just because we got distracted with something else. Bite development is obviously what we're talking about. And for us, we're always looking for those calm, crushing bites. That's the ideal. We want the dog to be calm and confident and knowing that everything he does works, and that the person that's receiving the bite is gonna submit to them, right? And that's exactly what we want. Now, we gotta keep in mind that that's the ideal bite, but it's not always the realistic scenario, based on angles. Sometimes the dogs don't get to bite the same way. There's multiple factors at play when it comes to the bite. So this is the ideal, but every dog is different. And I don't like disqualifying a dog just because it's not simply biting perfectly. If the dog is biting and a police department just needs a dog that's gonna bite a person, that dog will do it. So, but when we train, this is the ideal that we're working for. I'm gonna play this video right now. I apologize if the video is a little slow. The connection is not as fast as I would like to be able to stream the videos properly, but you still are able to see what I'm talking about in the video. So this is the ideal of what we're looking for. It's a dog like this that is constantly pushing. No matter what I'm doing, he just regrips and bites harder. As you can see, I always reward them by letting them fall into the ground, reacting to their bite, vocalizing, letting them know that what they're doing is working. That this specific dog, his name is Norton. He's a pretty popular dog from Holland, from the KMPV program. The dog has fathered a lot of police dogs. It's very important, this part. The dog is the one who decides what is reinforcement and what is punishment. They are the ones who decide what they like and what they don't like, right? I see a lot of people that they decide because they said, good boy, that they rewarded their dog. The dog doesn't speak English, the dog could care less. To some dogs that means a lot, but to some other dogs, they don't care. They don't even want you close to them when they're in a bite. So let the dog realize, let him tell you what is positive and let him tell you what is bad. Some dogs, if you grab their paws, they don't care. But to some other dogs, if you grab their paws, they really don't like that. So that is seen as punishment. So the canine is the one that controls the stimulus. And always the ultimate goal is for the dog to understand that if you fight harder, the negative stimulus goes away. Whatever it's happened to you that you don't like, if you bite harder, it will stop. It will go away. In the other hand, if you're not fighting hard enough, the negative stimulus will increase, right? It will get worse unless you mitigate it, unless you do something about it, the stimulus will get worse. So we use classical conditioning and operant conditioning in Bitework, just like we do in every other aspect of dog training. And that's something that is very important that we understand it. For those of you who understand this topic and this subject very well, I apologize if this is something very basic, but I always like to cover it just so it can make sense what I cover in the rest of the presentation. So classical conditioning was noticed by Russian scientist Ivan Pavlov. He was conducting testing and experiments. I believe it was on stomach ulcers. They were not really looking for any behavioral or anything like that. They were literally studying stomach ulcers. And then they noticed that when they were preparing the food for the dogs started salivating. And whenever he noticed this behavior, that's what it kind of like sparked his inquiry of why that happens. And this is where classical conditioning started. The dogs And the base of classical conditioning in Pavlov's test was that dogs only salivated when they smelled the food at the beginning. Whenever they saw and smelled the food is the only time they salivated. Obviously, salivating is an uncontrolled behavior, just like us. Dogs can't control when they salivate, but there's certain things like food and appetite that makes them salivate to prepare their mouth and their stomachs to receive food. So he noticed that that happened consistently every time that food was coming. And that after they did it long enough, like putting food inside a metal bowl, they started noticing that pairing that the dogs began to salivate with the sound. So they were able to pair that stimulus with the salivation. And here's how it looks. So before conditioning, the food is the only thing that caused the response. So the unconditioned stimulus, which is food, they do not have to teach a dog that food is good. That's something that they're born knowing. That's why it's an unconditioned stimulus. Causes an unconditioned response, the salivating, and it's automatic. The dog doesn't have to think about it. And before the conditioning, before they introduce a whistle, that means absolutely nothing to the dog. That's what is called the neutral stimulus, because the whistle it means nothing in a dog's head. There's no response at all, because obviously he doesn't know it. But when we're adding the condition, and when you pair the whistle with something he does know, like the food, then we can create the dog to have the whistle create the exact same response that the food did. And that is the basis for classical conditioning. We can do the exact same. I use this method, this classical conditioning in Bitework, and it's very, very helpful. And what you have to think, classical conditioning equals to learning by association. And operant conditioning, which we're going to cover next, equals learning by consequence. So learning by association, you do something over and over and over, like pairing the food with the whistle, and the dogs will learn it. Operant conditioning is more learning by consequence. So operant conditioning, we're gonna start on this. It's produced and was studied by B.F. Skinner, and it represents 4 quadrants of learnings. And even though they're quadrants, they really all flow back and forth amongst each others. But for easier learning and understanding, they're divided into 4 quadrants. And those are positive reinforcement, positive punishment, negative reinforcement, and negative punishment. In operant conditioning, I always like to think of the positive and the negative like math, like adding or subtracting. So positive is not good or bad. It equals adding something or subtracting something when it comes to negative. And in reinforcement or punishment, then obviously reinforcement equals something that is going to promote a behavior, and punishment is something that will decrease a behavior. So this chart helps us understand and explains a little bit better the operant conditioning quadrants. As you can see, positive, it adds something, and negative, it removes something. And in reinforcement is something that increases the frequency of the desirable behavior, and punishment, it decreases the frequency of the undesirable behavior. So positive reinforcement is when we add something that will increase the likelihood. The best example for that is your dog sits, you give him a treat, and the dog is more likely to sit because he wants that treat to happen again. Negative reinforcement is when we remove something. So for example, if your dog, the car does this one to us all the time to humans. For example, if you sit on your car and you don't put your seatbelt, your car starts having that very, very annoying ding, right? It starts ding, ding, ding. And some of the new cars, they get even increasingly worse. So whenever you do click your seatbelt, your car rewards you by removing the annoying noise. So that's negative reinforcement. Negative is the removing of the noise that reinforces the behavior of you putting on your seatbelt. So even car makers are using operant conditioning on us every single day, and we don't know it. Technology uses it, it's very, very efficient, and humans respond to it extremely well. In the other hand here, positive punishment is when we add something that decreases a behavior. So no different, just like when we add a correction and decreases the likelihood. If your dog jumps on someone and we use a prong collar or an electronic collar and we tell them no, and the dog knows, okay, I'm not gonna do that again because I did not like what they did to me. And in the other side, negative punishment Negative, we remove something. So if your dog is eating his food and he growls at you, and then you remove the food to punish him for growling, that is negative punishment. The removing of something the dog likes will decrease the likelihood of him growling at you for it again. And like I said, they're divided into quadrants, but really they flow amongst each other. So don't get too hung up on the fact that they're quadrants. B.F. Skinner, also to experiment the operant conditioning, he created something called the Skinner box. It was used to conduct the experiments that isolated specific behaviors. So for us, in our application for dog training, we use it to isolate behaviors, like I said. Some of the examples are a bungee cord that uses the back pressure to keep the dog from coming off or from moving his mouth. We use the bite tables. I like to use a wall. Even the own handlers can be used as a Skinner box. Is anything that we can use to isolate a behavior. So this is the original Skinner box. This is where B.F. Skinner conducted the experiments with the rats. They had to, when some of the lights, came on, the rat had to press a lever and some food would be dispensed. If they pressed the lever at the wrong time, then there was a correction. And this is what they originally named the Skinner box. There's another part that is big to dog training and for more in bite work, and that is called opposition reflex or resistance to coercion. This was described by Ivan Pavlov when he was working with the classical conditioning experiments, and he was known to him, or he named it the freedom reflex, because they discovered this while they were trying to put harnesses on the dogs, and whenever they pull on the dogs try to pull away. So it basically it comes down to an involuntary and consistent behavior, but it is a push against a pull. So basically, when you pull on your dog, he pushes against you, and vice versa. We use that a lot in bite work because we can pull on the leash, create tension, which makes the dog wants to regrip, and then we just let go, and we get the behavior we were looking for. So if I pull back, the dog is going to want to push forward, and we can use that to our advantage during training. Now, some new documents and information has come out that there's not really a reflex. It's not officially an actual reflex. It's just a resistance to coercion. It's just a resistance to do what you're being told. So either way, we use it to our advantage in bite work, and it's something that I am very, very big fan of. That's something very important I want you guys to keep in mind. Something very important to keep in mind is whenever we're working with a dog, we got to keep in mind that specific dog's genetic potential. Every dog is different, even when they come from the same litter, like I said earlier. And our goal as dog trainers is to increase the threshold of the dogs. So we add stimulation to increase the threshold of stress that the dogs can handle. So we add, pressure with either vocalizing, grabbing their legs, whichever way we choose to add a little pressure. And we do that slowly by adding stimulation a little bit at a time. But there is a limit. There's a limit that we cannot go past that. So we maximize it to that point, but after that, we cannot add any more genetic potential. That genetic potential is dictated by the parents. And this is something that it's very hard for understand to a lot of dog trainers and also for handlers and owners, because nobody wants to hear that their dog, doesn't matter how much you train them or how much money you spend on him, genetically, they just can't do it. And unfortunately, that is the truth. If the dog just genetically can't do it, there's nothing we can do. We can definitely train it, but at the core, they will always revert back to what they naturally do. So I like to divide my programs and my training into different sections, like pre-teething, post-teething, and then adult, more realistic kind of scenario type of work in the suit. So pre-teething, our goals is to establish a baseline. I like to see where the dogs are at, and I like to establish every dog, like I said, is an individual. So we like to work them individually and try to make sure that we know what the dog is starting with. Some dogs are really great, and some dogs we have to put a little bit more of a foundation than other dogs. So every dog is different. We got to establish each individual dog's baseline. And also, one of the other goals is to create a positive association to bite work. This is one of the important parts that we do it, like I said earlier, that the dog is having fun and the dog enjoys what they're doing, because we want them to, every time they're going to come out and do bite work and get trained, that they're super excited and they're looking forward to it. We don't want a dog that is like, oh no, I don't want to do this, and they're pulling you trying to get away. We want to create that positive association so the dog really likes it for the future. And like I was just saying, in this state, it's very important that we try to enhance any positive genetics that the dog has. So if the dog is showing very good possessive behaviors, we try to enhance that as much as possible. This is one of the puppies that I worked with. They're about 10, 11 months now, but this is when they were puppies and when we were starting to train with them. Something that I like to do a lot is I don't like to make the dogs miss. So making the dog constantly miss, and then when they miss 2 or 3 times, then we give them a bite. I don't like to do that because, in my opinion, the dogs give the most effort on the first or second try. And then we punish them by not giving them a toy at that point. And then on the third one or the 4th time, it's usually the least amount of effort they're putting on it because they're frustrated and they haven't really tried that hard. Sorry, they have tried hard at the beginning and it didn't work for them. And then in that 3rd or 4th time when they're not trying as hard, then they get rewarded. So I don't like to reward the least amount of effort. I want to reward the most amount of effort. And for that, what I like to do is I like to let the dog chase the toy. And then once I see that the dog has a lot of energy, that he really wants to get it, then kind of like a spring loaded, we let them slingshot forward. This video shows very well that behavior. So the puppy makes the sleeve come alive. He has to bark for the sleeve to come alive. And after he's done it enough, then we let him chase it.
When I bark, I run down and let him chase me and then slingshot him.
Perfect. So as you can see, the puppy starts chasing it, and when they chase it and put a lot of energy, then we let them shoot forward and grab their toy.
Yes.
Obviously, we're working on the puppy's regrip and trying to get them to learn to bite with their back teeth.
Kill it. Kill it. Yes. Good job. Good puppy. Yes. That is a good puppy.
And you see the puppy's loving it. He's having a really good time. And that's a very important part. The entire time we're training, the dog needs to be having fun.
Yes.
I'm trying to introduce some noise. I'm trying to see if I can find a baseline, see if I see any problems that they're having. And all I'm doing is trying to promote a regrip. So I hold the bite surface steady and I wait for them to do it. And once they regrip, I let go as quickly as possible to reward them for biting deeper. See, as you can tell, I'm touching their paws, I'm touching everywhere, trying to see if I can find something that they don't like. I pinch their skin, I grab their paws. All I'm trying to see is what this individual dog is uncomfortable with, because that way I know what he doesn't like and I can start working on fixing it. This is another puppy from the exact same litter, and even though they work similar, you will see that they're completely different dogs. We focus on doing the exact same. We want the dog to activate me I don't dance for the dog. The dog has to activate the toy by barking. So it goes dead, and then the dog activates.
Forward, let it dragging like that, slowly, let it drag.
And the same, the dog starts loading slowly, and when he has a lot of effort, we let go.
There it go, there it go. Yes, good.
There you go.
Perfect. How about that?
Good job, man.
Same thing, we hold the sleeve, the second they regrip, and we wait and we're patient. Sometimes the puppies take a little bit longer than others. You have to be patient, and we show them that that behavior doesn't work. You have to try something else. After they try and they regrip, then we let go and we give them a huge reward. On a side note, something to keep in mind, if the puppy is a very, very possessive genetically, if it's a very possessive dog, you're gonna see that they're less likely to regrip because they don't wanna open their mouth. But still, we're patient, we wait, and once they do give the behavior, we give them a big reward. This puppy genetically is very possessive, so I'm trying to enhance that characteristic. As you can see, I'm trying to take the dog away, and I let her pinch it and possess it between her legs. It's a genetic thing that she's offering, so I'm just trying to enhance it. I didn't teach her that. It's something that she offered. I'm just marking the behavior and trying to do it more and more and more. As you can see, she doesn't care about anything. She likes it a lot. She just wants to make sure that nobody takes her toy. These puppies come from really, really good genetic lines. They're very, very well bred. He's a local trainer here, actually in Ocala as well, where I'm from. And she has a very, very good lines of dogs. And these puppies, the entire litter was very, very good. So it's something that whenever I pick dogs, very important, you know, look at genetics, look at the parents, because genetics play a huge role in the dogs and in the dog selection. As you can see, she's been going for over a minute, holding that in her mouth, and she just is completely crushing it and holding it between her paws. She doesn't care, she just wants to keep it. And when she does something like that, she gets to take it and have it. She's rewarded for it. I always try to promote the dogs bringing the toy to me and play with me. I don't want them to think at any moment that I'm gonna take it from them. I want them to think that if they bring it to me and they play with me, that is a lot more fun. Every time a dog lets go of the toy, I don't give it back. I don't let them have it again. If they let go, they get dragged out and they're done. That's it. They don't get a second chance. The reason for that is there's a lot of learning in failure. If they lose it, and don't get it back, they're gonna try a lot harder next time they get a chance because they don't want to lose it again. So that's something a lot of trainers says you always have to finish on a positive note. I disagree with that. In nature, that never happens. If a wolf is chasing a bunny and the bunny gets away, nobody feels bad for that wolf and gives him a second chance. He goes hungry, and next time he gets a chance at a bunny, he's gonna try way harder because he's motivated to work. So I believe that's something that really works with dogs the same way. So if they let go, they don't get it back. That's it. This is another puppy that's very, very possessive. And as you can see, we're promoting that behavior. This puppy was bred by Michael Nesbitt. At a very young age, we're trying to introduce them to different behaviors, like promoting possessive grip. And also here, we're starting to introduce them to a current of cans. So this is just an environmental stress, and it is just a bunch of cans. So before we make it into an actual curtain where they can go through it while it's completely covering the chairs there, we have to get them to go over them while they're low on the ground. So we start slowly building the puppy up. And we start with the curtain of cans on the ground, and we slowly make them taller, taller, and taller. What you see is the very beginning of the puppy just goes through it, and then he gets rewarded. No big deal, just something small to start with and to slowly move up and progress. Like I said, this puppy was bred by Michael Nesbitt. He's the one doing the work right now. He's a very good friend and a business partner as well from Grassroots Canine in Canada. This is the progression of the same. As you can see, now the cans are a little bit taller and the dog has to deal with them a little bit more. So this is the progression of the last video. As you can see, obviously the dog puppy genetically is very strong and he doesn't care much for the cans. He's just plowing right through the cans. Now, the cans are all the way up in the next video. This is the progression of the last one. So this is the final product right here. We want the dog to just run straight through the cans and deal with that stress. As you can see, it's a slow progression. We don't just throw the dog on the deep end. So once the puppy has succeeded in all the previous steps, then we let him go to the other step. And we can slowly start introducing them to all of these things and showing them that they're safe while they're doing it, and that the same aspect happens, like biting gets you everything you want. But as you can tell, even when they're working with stressors, they're having a ton of fun. Look at his tail, he's really liking it. And that's what we want. We want the dogs to be there doing that willingly, and that they have the strong genetic potential for us to be able to maximize it. So once we notice that the dog starts teething, they start losing their first couple teeth, then I stop doing bite work altogether. I don't do anything again until they get all their new teeth, all their adult teeth in. The reason for that is, if the dog bites something when they're losing teeth, there's a big chance that they can have pain and have a negative association of biting with their teeth hurting. At no point do I want the dogs to think that biting something is going to cause them pain. I want them to think the opposite, that whenever they bite something, that receives pain. So if the dog is teething and they have a tooth that's loose or a tooth that's bothering them, and we do bite work with them, we can create problems that will show themselves in the long run. So once we notice that the dogs have received all their adult teeth, then we can start with the post-teething training. That is to continue the previous training for generalization. So we want to generalize them for as many things as possible. And we want to show them different places, different types of materials that they're going to bite, noises. This is when we start exposing them to as many things as possible. And in the building endurance on the bite, we want the dogs to start biting longer and longer and longer. One of the most common things that I notice and I find is that the dogs that we work with have absolutely no stamina. They have very, very low stamina, and the dogs don't last even 5 minutes on the bite. For me, a dog should be able to do a bite session of 15, 20 minutes, even 10 to 15 minutes will be good, but that should be a baseline. That should be the beginning of it. And it's very difficult for most dogs to be able to do that because most people just work the dogs 2-3 minutes and then that's it, they stop. Work the dogs longer and longer so we can start building the endurance. And one of the other very important things that we want to start at this moment is the cues to regrip. So basically we want to start adding different signals that are going to let the dog know, okay, I understand, that means regrip. And we use classical conditioning, just like Pavlov was able to make the dog salivate, by making the noise of the food. We can make the dogs regrip by having different cues, like touching their back, making the leash tight and then loose. We can use multiple different cues to teach the dogs to regrip. And this is the moment to start teaching those cues. This is one of the puppies from our program, and they're starting to all the training right after the teething process has ended. So we start working with a little toy. That is what they started. And as you can see, it's the same thing. Once they pull tight and then they regrip, they get to keep it.
Yes. Good job. Good job. Very good. Good job. Right.
We're creating the cue. When the leash goes tight and then loose, she has to regrip. This is another dog that just got done with the teething process. This is so you guys see a different breed working as well. He's an American Pit Bull, and the dog is very, very good genetics. He loves to work. And in this session, what we're working is, like I said earlier, he needs to bite full, and if he lets go of it, he will lose it and he will not get it back. Right now, I'm working with a wedge that is a very, very slippery leather pillow. So this one, they have to really crush down with their grip in order for them to keep it and for me to not take it from them. So it's very important that he keeps his grip on this one to make sure he doesn't lose it. It's like I said, it's a leather bite wedge that is very, very slippery. It's made specific for that. If he doesn't hold on tight enough, I can take it from his mouth. But this equipment is specifically built for this. The whole pulling on the wedge cannot be done with just any wedge. It has to be done with specific wedge because you can cause damage to their teeth. So that's why we have to have the right equipment to work. Here we're doing the exact same behaviors. You want him to hold on and then regrip. The second he does, I let go of the wedge.
Yes. Good. He's like, oh, I get it. I understand the game. I get it. I get it.
And I love for the dog to have fun, so I try to be as high-pitched voices and try to make sure the dog is having fun and that he wants to be there doing it.
Yes. Good.
But once again, if he loses it, that's it. He's not gonna get it back. His job is to keep a good grip on it at all times. And as you can see, he wants to play with me. He wants to bring it. And why it's so important that he wants to bring it to me, it is because once the dog starts biting me in the suit, he has to play with me because there's no way that the suit can separate itself from me. So he needs to be okay with biting and being close to me. And this is how he starts. We teach him that bringing whatever he's biting to me, playing with me, is way more fun.
He's cute as shit.
Oh, there you go. As you can tell, he completely loses it. He doesn't get it back. And we put him all the way like that, teasing him, put him away. That's it. He's done for that session. Here's the same puppy that I was working earlier. This is the progression of the training on that same dog. Here we're gonna start teaching her to come on the table. So as you can see, we're gonna start teaching her to jump and follow the same training she was doing before. We're just gonna have the continuity of it and have her do it on the table. Try to help them. They're Malinois, they're crazy dogs. They wanna bite and kill everything. So they're not as smooth doing some things like getting on the table, but we just wanna teach them that no matter where they're at, where they're biting, is the same behaviors. They need to bite and regrip. I like to use the bite table because it's a Skinner box. It's somewhere that I can isolate the behaviors. The dog is tied up, they can't go anywhere, they can't spin, they have to focus on me. Also, The table, the floor of it is very, very slippery. So the dogs have to put all their energy into their mouth. They can't use their legs to pull or anything. They have to use their mouth to grip. So that's why I like the table to start the dogs. It teaches them what needs to be done, and it allows them to use the right biting technique to be able to keep the toy in their mouth and not lose it. Same, always making sure the dog is having fun and rewarding when they're doing the right thing.
Yes.
Always the same. The dog regrips and I let go. I try to introduce some noise to see and start like the same than before, establishing a baseline and see what bothers the dog. And if nothing does, then we reward it. This puppy is like 5 months in this video. Like I said, she's one of our dogs in our police prospect program. And she's excelling very well at the moment. I always like to touch everywhere, their head, their necks, everywhere. So they start desensitizing to the touch and to me doing everything. I touch their paws, their legs, and same deal. If they lose it, they get put up and they don't get it again. We tease them all the way out, but they don't get to bite it again. You can see she's very frustrated. She doesn't want to go away, but that's part of it. She needs to learn. If you let go, you don't get it back. After the dog has learned that progression, then they get to be move on to the pillow or the same wedge that the previous dog was using. And I like to teach them the same thing. The dog has to bark and make me move. I'm not gonna move until the dog tries to bring me closer. Everything he does has to bring me to action.
Yes.
As you can see, I'm doing the same. I'm desensitizing the dogs to hands coming over their head. I'm using the leash also to come over his head and see if anything is bothering him. But everything is the same. If he regrips, everything goes away, my hands go away, and he gets to keep the toy. It's one of the moments that the table is really good. It helps me isolate the behaviors. I want him to regrip. He didn't regrip, so then he loses it and he doesn't get it back. Same deal with him. This is the negative punishment aspect. I take away, that's the negative aspect of it, and take away his toy because he opened his mouth and let it go. He's not gonna get it back. And hopefully by doing that, we decrease the likelihood of him letting go again. This is another dog in our program. She's a little bit older and she's about to transition right before she was going into the suit. Since she was a little bit behind in her training, we decided to start in the wedge, but it's the same behaviors even though that she's a little bit older. We wait for a regrip and then we let go and promote that behavior. We try to also desensitize going over, bring the hand over, using a leash, all the different things. We use noise, we use everything, but we're always looking for the full calm grips. And as you can see, I wait, and when the dog regrips, then I back away. And she really enjoys it. She's very, very happy with it. And that's how I try to take it from her and see if she has it. She has very genetically, she naturally has very, very big regrip. So the table helps us isolate that behavior. And as you can see here, she tries to back up, but because I have her on the table and she's tied up, she's unable to do that. And she has to come back forward and work with me. Those are the advantages of the table and other things like the bungee and things like that. That is the pillow, the wedge that I was using in all the previous videos. You guys can find it in fordogtrainers.com. I am in no way sponsored by them or get anything from this. This is just to show you guys the equipment that I use when I work with my own dogs. So these are very, very helpful. These ones are specifically made for them to be slippery and for the dogs to have to bite with their molars and be able to hold on to them. So they are also, you can change the covers. So it works really well because they get worn out after a couple dogs bite them. So it's very helpful that you can just go and buy a new cover for them as well. And like I said, you can find them at fordogtrainers.com. And then this is the next step. This is when we start introducing them to the suit. I always like to introduce the dog into the suit close to or after a year old. I don't care how good the dog is or how skilled they are. I try to keep the dogs all away from the suit until they're a year old, only because of the maturity level. A lot of dogs have a lot of genetic potential and they're very, very strong. They show all the right behaviors, but they're still young in their brain. So I like to let the dog mature. I like the dog grow. And then once they reach a year old, or at least they're very close to it and they're showing the proper progression in their training, then we allow them to buy the suit. This is my own personal dog, Santo. He was 11 months old, I believe, in this video, close to a year old, exactly a year old. And it was time to introduce him to the suit because he was getting so big, it was not so safe to work him on a sleeve anymore. So to do this and to do it the proper way, we use a table to isolate all the proper behaviors that we were looking for. And we were able to introduce him to the suit the proper way. For example, we can make sure that we get the right placement so the dog can get the repetition over and over and over of where to bite the proper way. So this is the video of it. Even though he's never bit a bite suit before, he understands the behavior of the decoy and what the decoy is doing. We're trying to make sure that he bites on the proper way. And all we're doing is just isolating the proper behaviors like we were doing previously. All he has to do is to regrip. Once he regrips, I mark it and I reinforce it. So if you can see, between the chain and the dog being on the table, he's not really to do much more other than biting exactly where he's at. And that's exactly where we want him to bite. I want him to get the repetitions and the muscle memory of where he needs to bite.
Yes.
Like I said, this is this dog's very, very first time on a suit. And as you can see, it might not be the prettiest, but he definitely is learning and he's trying to figure out what to do.
Yes. Good. Yes.
And as you can see, he starts getting a little mouthy, and that's why I pull back and create tension instantly with my leash. And I work together with the decoy, we communicate, and I tell them what we want to work on.
Oh, good job, buddy. Yes. Good.
See the entire time. I'm rewarding and making sure he understands that what he's doing is okay and that I'm glad that he's doing it.
Good job.
I don't want to be a cheerleader for my dog. I don't want him to be needing me there constantly, but I do want to mark the behaviors. And these very first bites, it's very important that we mark the behaviors and we show them what they need to be doing.
That's what you want. Yes, that's what you want, buddy.
And as you can see, it's a pretty long bite. Even though it's his first bite, we let him bite for quite a bit before we ask him to let go.
Good boy. Good. Yes. Good. Yes. Good boy, buddy. Tight. Go back. Tight. Forward.
And between the lead, the table, and the decoy, we're able to isolate the behaviors that we're looking for. In this case, is the rig grip. So we bring him there, and then the decoy gets in place, and we get a huge rig grip, which is exactly what we're looking for.
Yes. Perfect. Good job. Good. Yes. Good boy. Yes. Good. That is it. Good.
As you can see, I'm very excited for him. He's my personal dog, like I said. So he's very excited. Once he's done it right, we run away and let him chase it for a bit.
Wrap around the shed.
And like I said, that was the dog's very first time. Now, this is the dog shepherd that we were working in a wedge earlier. It's the same. Now, this time we're introducing the suit in this other table. This way I can make sure she bites in the proper place. And all we're looking for is the same with all the dogs. Open your mouth, bite deep, and bite harder every single time. And once you do that, everything is good. So I work together with the handler, and we do the exact same behaviors we're doing on the table. We start progressing and moving her into the ground. Now I have the handler do the same thing that the table was doing. She's in charge of isolating the behaviors with the lead.
Yes. Good.
Always doing the same. We pick them up. No matter what we do, they just have to re-grip and bite harder.
Oh, yes. Very nice. Very good.
I like to grab their flank, grab their skin, and see how they handle it and how they deal with that.
Yes.
You can see this is one of the females in our police dog program. She's one of our breeding females, and genetically she's extremely strong and she works extremely well.
Yeah. Yes. Oh.
I try to find what bothers the dog. I grab their paws. I try to scream. I like to figure out and try all the different things. That way we know what we need to work on and what we need to fix. I like to use everything that's available to me to try to teach the dogs different environments, but the answer is always the same. Bite harder and re-grip and everything is okay. We always like to work, and like I was talking earlier about creating cues to re-grip. In this session, we were gonna work on teaching her that the handler approaches the dog and touches the collar, like they're gonna out the dog bites deeper. So you're gonna see that when the handler starts approaching the dog will regrip, and that's their cue that we were trying to teach the dog. When the handler approaches you or touches you, bite harder. A lot of times the dogs associate the handler approaching them with being outed, with being taken off. For that reason, I like to change that association and teach the dogs that if they see the handler approaching, all they have to do is bite harder and the handler will leave and not take them off. That way, if in a real life scenario, the dog is biting a person and the handler approaches to help on the fight, the dog doesn't think he's gonna be taken off. He just thinks, oh, I know what this means, just bite harder. So here you will see when the handler approaches the dog and she goes to out her, she takes a huge regrip. So now what we're gonna do is the dog regrips and the handler backs away. The decoy marks it, I vocalize and mark it and reward it, and we do it all over again. And we do this constantly. We do it over and over again. Anytime the handler approaches, the dog regrips, and then I take her away. And then we do it again. I bring her back. The handler approaches, the dog regrips, and then I take the dog away again. So we start creating the memory that the handler being next to you equals bite harder. Now we're trying to pair the command, a word, with the behavior.
Margarita, Stellan.
Yes.
Like I said, we do it over and over and over in order to be able to condition the stimulus, which is the handler approaching, to the unconditioned behavior of regripping. And as the dog gets tired, of course, you see that the repetition of it goes down a little bit, but we still wait and wait for the dogs to give us the right behavior. We approach it again. And try one more time.
Yes.
And then when the dog regrips, we mark it.
Yes. Yes.
Then after all the times that the handler approach, only once the dog gets outed. And I like to tease the dogs and work the dogs all the way until they're put up. This is another example of the same, creating the cue for the handler to, for the dog to bite deeper. In this video, you will see how the handler pulls on the dog's harness. And when he releases the pressure on the harness, the dog regrips and pushes forward.
He's gonna get tired quick. He barely fit in his harness.
This is a retired police dog, so he hadn't been working too much. This is a session we did to get him back up to speed. And as you can see, genetically, the dog is very strong. He loves to bite. He pushes with the back legs. He's putting all his energy into the bite. And here's where the conditioning begins. You see that the handler makes the harness tight, and when he lets go, the dog bites harder. And we do it over and over and again.
Last one.
I mark it, vocalizing and letting him know that what he's doing is working and he's biting me. You see how the handler is able to communicate to the dog what he wants him to do, which is bite harder, just by simply giving him a cue that the dog already knows.
Yeah, bust the nut and bite.
And after we have introduced the dogs and created the cues and taught them what is expected of them while they're in the suit, then we can move on to more of the advanced work on the suit. Here you'll see this is a dog that is starting to understand all the cues and everything that he's supposed to be doing. So we started working with him more off leash and letting him to use all the techniques that he's learned to deal with the pressure that we teach them. And this is where we let them put together all the techniques and all the things that they've learned. But the answer doesn't change. It's always the same. If he bites harder, everything gets better. And it doesn't matter what I'm doing, grabbing his tail, putting my weight on top of him. If he bites harder, it stops. This is the same with this dog. No matter what we're doing, he responds, bites harder, everything stops. No matter where they're at, no matter the position, the dog has to do the same thing. Just regrip and bite harder. In this video, you guys will see how the dog, after being worked and taught that if he fights and he bites harder, everything stops, he has learned that also positioning his body might give him an advantage on the fight. So you will see that when I try to grab his leg, the dogs will jump to their side or do whatever they need for me to not be able to grab their paws. This happens after hours and hours of training and having so many repetitions that the dog understands this is the best way to keep myself safe.
You guys want to see something cool? The dog that's learned how to fight upside down. You learn how to motherfucking let me do it.
He's obviously a very, very smart dog, and he's learned how not to do it.
But if you notice,
But if you
he
see,
learns, he knows how to fight upside down.
he will physically position himself where he has the advantage. As you can see, he has no problem. He has no nerve issues. He's still biting and pushing forward very, very violently. But he knows that it's better for himself and it's safer if he positions himself like that. So you see that he learns that when he's on his side, it's safer for him. I can grab his paws. But if he bites harder, no matter what, everything stops. And he's on top and he can win the fight. As long as he continues to bite harder and harder.
He knows very well how to protect his legs.
See, he's being taught that not protect your legs, don't let me grab them. But if you bite harder, everything stops.
So good.
You see, when he bites, I completely stop. I take away the negative stimulation that he was feeling. So that is negative reinforcing. By removing that, me grabbing his leg, by letting go, I reward the behavior of him regripping and biting me harder. This is the exact same dog. We're just working on different techniques, but the dog still has to use the exact same behaviors that we taught him to be able to get through the pressure. As you can see, he's trying to protect his front legs. He obviously doesn't want me to grab his legs. That's very smart, but he's still biting and pushing forward. He's using his rear legs, he's using his back legs to push and regrip instead of his front legs. This is not avoidance, this is him. He doesn't care if I grab his paws, if I grab it, whatever, he's fine with it. But obviously he's smart and he will prefer that I don't. So he tries and uses all the techniques he has to be able to protect himself and protect his front legs. Here we start adding more pressure. As you can see, the dog gets to go in the pool. If he lets go while he's in the pool, I will take off running, but you'll see in this video, he doesn't. He just bites harder even when he's on the pool. So you see, he's biting and re-gripping in the pool, just like he does outside. So if he does that, I reward him by bringing him out and letting him bite me on the ground where he has the advantage. Always when we're doing this, and more when we're working on the advanced suit work, it's very important to keep the dog's safety first. You have to keep the dog safe. Doesn't matter what you're working on and what you're doing, keep the dog safe always. Same dog. This is a very skilled dog. That's why I like to use him for all my videos. But as you can see, mom approaching, the handler coming over equals fight harder. He really likes it. He enjoys having her there. She is part of the team and part of the fight. I see a lot of dogs that the second the handler approaches them, all they think is they're gonna get outed and that the fun is gonna stop. So instead, we wanna create the opposite association. We want them to think that mom or the handler, whoever approaches that is in their team, is gonna make everything better for them and create that positive association with the handler approaching the bite. Something very important that after the dogs have learned all the skills and learn how to fight, then we have to move on to start teaching them to ignore distractions. That's something that we need to teach them. They only should be focusing on the decoy and nothing else. A lot of dogs are very equipment fixated. What that means is that they would rather bite a sleeve or a toy or something over a person. We need to teach the man that the dog that the most important thing is to bite the decoy, to bite a person. That should be the highest value there is. There should be nothing more important than biting a person. So all the rest of the distractions need to be ignored. Here you will see that even though I have a sleeve and a wedge in my hands, the dog just wants to bite me. I try to fool the dog and I put the sleeve over my bite suit and I slip it off and let him have it. And you'll see he spits it right out and just wants to come and bite me. You see, the second I let go of the sleeve, he doesn't care much for it and he just bites me harder. And even though I'm offering the wedge, something that he's bit a million times in the past, he doesn't want it. He just wants to bite me. And it's something very important that we teach the dogs. Doesn't matter what you get offered, nothing is as important as biting the person. This is another example. We offer the dog a lot of different things, like a toy, even other bite suits, and the dog doesn't care. He just wants to continue biting me.
It's a fight, I'm ready to go. I wouldn't put my money on the other guy if you know what I gotta know. It's been a long time coming, and the tables turn around. 'Cause one of us is going, one of us is going down. It's a So get ready for another one. Let's take a trip down memory lane. The words circling in my brain. You can treat this like another wall scene, but don't cry like a...
As you can see in the video, the dog doesn't care for anything other than biting the man. He ran over a bite suit. He ran over a lot of different things that he really likes, but he knows that that means nothing because there's a person there waiting for him. And now we get to the out part. I always like to say this, it's called bite work, not outwork. Out is one of the things that causes the most conflict with the handler, is the number one cause, in my opinion, for conflict with the handler. It will drive a big wedge between you and your dog if your dog thinks that you are the person taking their phone away. Utilizing operant conditioning, we can communicate to the dog what we want from them. We can tell them that if you let go, you're gonna get it back. We don't wanna ever teach the dog that if you let go, you lose it. We wanna teach them that you're there to trade them, or that whenever they let go, they're just gonna get it right back. So we like to start teaching the out in a completely different context. What that means is, doing bite work is not a good place to teach the out. I like to teach the dog to out with a tennis ball or a toy, something in a completely different field that has absolutely nothing to do with bite work. It's something that we're just working on outing a toy. Think about this. If the dog won't out of a toy, they're definitely not gonna out in bite work. So master the out in a completely different context. Use a toy, use a tug, a bite wedge. Make sure the dog will out all of those before we start asking them to let go of the decoy, which is the highest value. And the other aspect is, I already talked about this a little bit, but we have to make sure that we satisfy our dog's needs and drives. What that means is, we see a lot of times that we bring a dog in, they bite the decoy for 30 seconds, and then right away, okay, take him off, make him out. That is very wrong, in my opinion, because the dogs came there to bite. They have a need. That's why they got chosen. We choose these dogs that live and die to do bite work. They really want to do it. We chose their parents because they were very good at bite work. Then out of the entire litter, we chose that one puppy because in our opinion, they were the best. They were raised and prepared the entire times to bite. And then the only time they get to do it is for like 30 seconds at a time. Yeah, absolutely there's conflict with that because they want to do it more and more and more. So before I try to even ask a dog to out, I work them for very long periods. So after the dog has been biting me for 15 to 20 minutes, they're way more likely to let go because they're tired, they have satisfied their drives, they've been doing it for a while. So they're way more likely to let go than if I do it right away when they haven't satisfied any of those drives. So make sure that you guys do long sessions where the dogs have satisfied their drives before you start asking them to let go. The other part is scenario-based training. Is something that is very important that we show a realistic picture during training. We like to use different equipment. In this occasion, I'm using a prosthetic arm. So it's a silicone arm that we wrapped around our arms. And you have to be very careful with it because the dog's aim has to be perfect, or otherwise you will definitely get some punctures in your real arm. So with this one, as you can see, we do it very, very slow. And I aim very well to make sure the dog is biting in the right place. The point of doing this is showing the dog the most realistic picture that we can, is to show the dog as close as possible to what happens in real life. Of course, a silicone arm is nothing, it doesn't feel anything like a human arm would, but the picture that the dog is seeing, a person just sitting there with an arm and a t-shirt, is a realistic picture that they will see in real life. So as you can see, we do it very slow and we make sure that the dog is aiming and biting in the right place. So we do it. This is slow-mo. You see the aiming of the dog is very important. That's why I'm looking very well, and I keep my eyes on the dog, and I make sure that he bites on the right spot, because otherwise it doesn't work out well. But this way we can make sure that the dogs will bite a person that looks just like that in real life. This is a more base scenario. We start working in different moments, like a decoy that is not moving at all. This is a decoy that is not giving the dog any kind of stimulation to begin with, but after the dog bites them, the decoy comes alive. So you see, it's a completely passive decoy. And when the decoy gets bit, then they become alive.
Come back to the sound of our voice. You know what I mean?
So as you can see, we try to show the dog a realistic picture. We try to show a little bit of chaos and screaming, and we make sure that the dog still performs the exact same way that they do during training. This is how we start progressing them to that next level. So we start teaching them how to do it. Same thing here. There's more fighting in different scenarios. Biting in different surfaces and at different elevations.
Got him?
Oh boy. Let's go. I'm gonna take the other hand, all right?
Get him up!
Your elbows are.
See, we're showing this entire picture to the dog. We try to show as realistic as possible, the handcuffing, and we try to show the dog what they will be doing at the end, in the real life scenario. In this next coming video, we try to show the dog the taser. So we start introducing a taser, and obviously only we want them to get used to the noise of it. And what we do is the dogs, as the dog is in the bite, then somebody deploys the taser close by. We're not using the prongs that fire out. It's just simply the taser that makes the noise. So you will see it in the video where you can see the little light. That's what we're working on, to introduce something new, like the noise of the taser, which is something that police dogs might encounter in real life. So we start adding chaos. We start showing him a person that is not giving up, that is resistant. So we like to introduce something new, like the taser, which might be used in addition of the dog. If you see the light, that's the taser. We're just trying to get the dog used to a team of people and having a taser right there next to him. And then once we have achieved that, we practice everything that we have learned in the past, like how to out your dog and how to take the dog out. This is a scenario of a dog that we own, that we were training, and now they actually have been already sold to police departments. But these dogs are biting completely in the dark. This is like 2, 3 in the morning. We went and found a good area to go train, and we try to present the most realistic scenario possible. We are wearing hidden sleeves and a jacket over it, a hoodie over our hidden sleeves, and that's it. That's all we have. So once again, we're trying to work on presenting that realistic picture. And I like to work at all times of the night. In this part here, you can see we're hiding under a semi-trailer.
It's the sheriff's office canine unit. You're under arrest. If you're in there, you need to come out. You're going to get dark. It's your last warning. Sheriff's office
canine unit. You're in there, you come out, you're gonna get dog bit.
As you can see, that's when we start putting all the techniques and everything that the dogs have learned, we start putting it all together and we start getting that final picture where the dog starts connecting the dogs and start generalizing all the behaviors and start putting everything together to get the final picture. And this is what that final picture looks like. This is a dog that is extremely well trained. In addition to that, he has a very, very high genetic tolerance. So the dog genetically is a monster, in my opinion. And so we're able to do a lot with him. All the stressors and all the things you will see on this video, they're really, really high. This is very much the final product. And this is, if you do this to any dog that is not prepared for it, you can create very bad damage, probably irreversible damage that a dog cannot come back from. So this is something that you can't do to every dog, but the dogs that are genetically capable of doing it, then we challenge them. We try to take them to that next step. And this is what that looks like. I'm using tarps. So that I have in my hand right now, you'll see is a plastic tarp. I put the dog inside the trash can so I can kick the trash can without hurting the dog. So I'm not actually kicking the dog, I'm kicking the trash can. So the picture and what he feels is the same. Anytime that he riggers and bites harder, I reward. I scream, I get down, I do anything I need to do to let him know.
Good boy. Good boy, good man. Hold him, buddy. Sir, good boy.
No matter how much I scream at the dog, I'm even using his out command, and he still won't let go. He understands, he shouldn't listen to me. He just needs to bite harder. Then at this moment, we ask the handler to come on in and get involved and start rewarding and making behaviors. That way he can reward the dog and let him know, yes, you're doing exactly what I'm asking. You're doing what I want you to be doing. And even though you see how much pressure we're putting on the dog, look at his tail. He's loving it. He's having a lot of fun.
again, do it again, do it again. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
And as you can see, I reward, I vocalize, and I let him know, yes, that's it. That hurts. Keep doing it more and more. No matter what I do to him, he just bites and wriggles and bites harder. As you can see how he's getting to.
Hold on, buddy. No.
I always try to involve the handler and ask them to be involved and to be there to motivate the dog and be a partner, right? To teach the dog, hey, when I'm here with you, it's all positive things, it's all good things.
Yes, buddy. Yes, sir. I wasn't going to take any from him. Just fucking tell him how to use. Yes.
The moment you see, we involve the handler, or we get him right there to make sure the handler gets involved and tells the dog how good he is and how well he's performing. Like I said, that is the final product that is very, very high pressure situations. So it's very important that it's dog only with a dog that can handle it. Not every dog can do that, but that dog is extremely good. So we decided to do a little testing, and he obviously did extremely well. That's it for my presentation. I really appreciate your guys' time. I hope you guys have learned something and you're able to take this back and better your dogs, or better the dogs that you're working with and the people that you're working with. And that this can add some tricks and some techniques to your book that you didn't have before. So once again, thank you so much for having your time. If you guys at any moment want to reach out to me, this is where you can find me. Triple Threat Canine is the company that we do traveling, and we do seminars, and we teach law enforcement and civilians all over the world. We travel anywhere in the world, so we can visit you guys in Australia if you guys would like to have us. And then Sierra Canine is our local business that we work here in Florida with pets and selling dogs to departments and so on. So if at any point you guys want to reach us or contact us, either or these two will be a good method of doing that. So once again, thank you so much, guys, for your time. And
Carlos, awesome presentation, my friend. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Anybody have questions for Carlos, either on the chat group, or if you want to unmute and ask a question, feel free.
Absolutely. Anyone that has a question, please shoot away.
And Carlos, I'll go ahead and ask you a question. It looked like on a lot of the videos you're having the handlers kind of almost do a choke off rather than a verbal out, but of course we couldn't hear all of the audio. If you could just take a minute and kind of talk about your thoughts on what you're training police to do real world as far as that out.
Absolutely. So the reason I like to teach the manual out over a verbal out is because in a real life situation, in a real life fighting situation, the dogs it's not 100% guaranteed that they're out cleanly like we need to. And in a situation where the dog is biting a person for real, and it's a real life situation, we can't just let the dog make the decision. When we need to take the dog off, the dog needs to come off, period. And I find that when you remove the dogs manually, when you, the way I like to do it is we take their airway using the collar, and it works really well because once the dog lets go, you also have control over their head. So that way that takes away any incidental bites or anything that may come after you out the dog and they happen to take a regrip or they happen to just nip a second time. If we take them out manually, we're able to prevent that. And then in the other hand, we also use it a lot for dogs that don't know the out. So instead of trying to get negative repetitions of telling the dog to out and the dog not doing it, we rather just get the bite work done and take the dogs out manually and then practice the out in a separate, in a different environment. And once you have that figured out and once the dog knows the out a lot better, then we can bring it back to bite work and hope that the dog does the association there.
Excellent. Thank you.
course.
I think there's just one other question, just kind of a general question, if you would, of what kind of advice would you give to that brand new decoy that wants to help with police departments, wants to help with sport, whatnot, but just isn't quite sure the right way to help?
Absolutely. For me, the best way to get your foot on the door or to get started is to get a bite suit. If you buy a bite suit, they get to be pricey. So save up some money. I understand. Sometimes you can find some used ones in the market. So, but if you have a bite suit, that opens the doors to everyone wanting to actually come in and let you work with them. If you have to borrow the person's equipment, sometimes they don't like that and they will shut the doors on you. But if you find a place that allows you to work with them, obviously working for free opens a ton of doors. And two, being humble, being the quiet guy in the back that whenever somebody needs help, you can say, well, I'll help. But don't try to go to tell people how much you know. Just it's better to go listen how much you can learn. So for me, that's a very important thing. Try to get your own equipment and try to, buy a suit or get some sleeves and some equipment, and that will open the doors. You can always say, I don't know much, but I have my own bite suit and I'm willing to learn. And for me, for example, even here in Florida, if somebody shows up and they tell me I have a bite suit and I want to learn how to get bit, I'm like, absolutely, come on over, right? But if somebody tells me, hey, I want to learn, but I don't have a bite suit, I have nothing, I'm like, well, there's not much help that you can really bring. So it really opens a lot more doors if you have your own equipment and you're humble and you just listen and open your ears and shut your mouth.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Carlos. Everyone's got your contact information, so they can contact you directly. But
absolutely,
on behalf of the Australian Working...
I just got one question.
Oh, go ahead.
Absolutely, yes.
Hi, Carlos. It's Wayne.
Yes.
I just want to find out how many times or do you ever finish a bite session with the dog in the dominant position?
Actually, I do that quite a bit. But I don't I don't make the dog get on the position. I like to reward it. If I know the dog will offer the behavior, for example, the dog bites me really hard and I fall to the ground and the dog just naturally jumps on top of me and acts more dominant, I like to finish that. And more if I do the session with a lot of pressure. If it's a session where I really challenge the dog, when I put a lot of pressure and I made the dog feel that sometimes vulnerable, then I like to finish with me being completely submissive and let the dog be very dominant over me. Sometimes I go completely flat on the ground and I let the dogs be on top of me, just so they live with the memory of that was very difficult, but I still won. And I literally was completely on top of that guy. So if I make a big impression in a challenge, I also want to leave the dog with a big impression that he won. And a good way to do that is acting submissive and leave the dog finish in a dominant manner.
So do you also do it at the end of stamina sessions?
Say that again?
Do you also sometimes finish like that at the end of some stamina sessions where you're just working the dog to see if they can go the amount of time you want?
So usually when I'm doing the stamina sessions, when I'm just going for longevity, when I'm going for very long sessions, I like to do more of a choke off so the dog leaves frustrated. So he leaves wanting more. I want them to be very tired and I want to make them leave wanting more. I'm being frustrated that they can't finish biting. But if I challenge them and I put a lot of pressure, then I submit to the dogs and I try to give in, basically. But if we're going for longevity, then yes, definitely I'll do the, just do a choke off at the end.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question.
Excellent. Well, I think that's it. If no one's going to pipe in, again, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the International Casino and Resort Working Dog Association, as well as the Australian Patrol Working Dog Association as well. So thank you, Carlos, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And like I said, any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out at this contact information that's on the screen.
Excellent.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks, Ryan.
Absolutely. Have a good day, guys. And for the ones in the US, have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.